episode 20 on the Gym Guys podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm Chris Scotto, Drago 1850, lucky enough to co host with my fellow hosts, Eric Schwartz, CEO, President Extraordinaire of Poor Power Nutrition, always hitting, always hitting the front double bicep, or at least one bicep.
Just one.
Supplement extraordinaire as well. Make sure you watch his supplement reviews on TikTok or Instagram. They're excellent. Speaking of excellent reviews on excellent supplements, Jason Budsock, the VP of Product Development and more at Animal for over 20 years. If you trust and love the products that you're taking from Universal Animal, well, this is the man behind the scenes. So love having both Eric and Jason on all the time. And before we get into our featured guest here, you can kind of get the hint with the screenshot behind me. An amazing gentleman, and I say gentleman, anything that I've learned from him, watched him, certainly heard from Eric and Jason, just a heck of a guy. Let's start off with the gratitude and the thank yous. Fireman, EMT, and police officer in Sunnyvale, California.
All at the same time. We'll get into
All
that.
at the same time. I don't know of anyone that does that. That's a record. You
I never heard that
behind
before.
for that. Amazing capacity, amazing public servant. So certainly thank you for that. Mad respect for all our men and women of service and public service and first responders. You can see the achievement behind me. It's one of many, the 942-pound wrap squat, wrapped, unwrapped, I don't care, saran wrap, whatever you want to call it. It's amazing. If you watch it on video, you will probably just crumble under your own emotion from watching these kind of lifts. They're amazing. He has endured and recovered and improved after 6 surgeries. He'll get into that. 6 surgeries. Started bodybuilding now, besides the powerlifting and the EMT and the police officer and the fireman. Been in 4 shows, has gotten second place in 2 of them, has won one of them, the NPC Central California Championships, and recently just competed in the North American, I believe it was in Pittsburgh, and got 3rd place in the 40 plus. So, I mean, I can go on and on. We definitely want to get into the nitty gritty and his journey. Everyone, please help me welcome Andrew Herbert, also known as Herbie, also known as Herbie the Love Bug on Instagram. And we're honored to have you. And like I mentioned, before we get into your journey and all the things that you could share to inspire people, certainly as you have inspired us, we'd like to just take a quick aside and talk about some of the current events that have been going on in the fitness, powerlifting, and bodybuilding world. And there's been quite a few good ones over the last week or two. So Jay and Eric, if you want to touch on that before we get into all the great stuff with Andrew.
Yeah. Ian Blair, if I'm saying his name right, dropped a bombshell I think it was just yesterday or the day before. He's retiring from bodybuilding. Didn't really say why, as far as I know. I didn't see where he said any particular reason, but that was kind of a bombshell because he was doing pretty well on the pro circuit.
Definitely. And whatever interviews I watched with him thus far, he seems very relieved and very happy about his decision. He actually almost looks like he got like a facelift in a positive way, that he is not competing anymore. Seems like he just wanted to make a major change in his life. So, hey, good for you, Ian. If you're watching this or you get to watch this, we obviously hope nothing but the best. And you certainly ended out on top, I think, winning one of your last pro shows. So,
I mean, if he's doing it for, health reasons, I think that's a very smart decision. We've seen unfortunately, too many athletes pass away recently. So if he's doing it for those reasons, kudos to him for making a smart decision.
So does this mean, because he was qualified for the Olympia, I thought, right? He's not going to do the Olympia?
He
doesn't sound like it.
It doesn't sound
Yeah, he spoke about pulling out of the Olympia. He's not going in, even though he's qualified.
Well, just for what it's worth, since we're on the topic, he's actually one of the people I looked at for looked at his posing when I was getting ready for this last show. A few different people, including my coach, suggested, hey, check out how Ian Blair does certain poses that I was kind of struggling with. So, Ian, I appreciate everything you've done.
Good dude. I'm sure he's still going to be involved in the industry and stuff. he's a coach, so I'm sure he's going to stay involved.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, Aaron. He does a really good job on podcasts. He speaks very well. He's very good with the fans. I've experienced him at events before, and him and his wife Melissa, and obviously
Chris Bumstead's sister, right?
Sister, yeah.
Bumstead's sister. That's correct. Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Since the last episode, we had the Masters Olympia has passed and gone, and Kamal won the Open, and Hidetada won the 212.
Yeah, some controversy there. I've at least read online, but when isn't there, right?
What did you think was controversial about
it? I definitely thought Kamal won it for sure. He's just so fresh and he hasn't missed a beat. As far as Hidetada, there was some back and forth of whether or not Max Charles, won that.
You're always going to get that in a subjective sport. Bodybuilding subjective, right? So there's always, it's very rare that there's somebody who's a clear cut,
Correct. And
unless it was like Lee Haney or Dorian Yates or, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, where it's so lights out. This wasn't so lights out.
Right.
Yeah, and I stand corrected. I'm mixing up Open with 212. The 212 with
Max Charles was in the Open, right?
Max Charles.
Yeah, he's not going to do 212.
And with the 212, actually David Henry, I think, was right there with Hidetada. So yeah, I mean, heck of a Masters Olympia. Everyone showed up, and shout out to Greg Rando too, who we're hoping to have on the podcast. Absolutely amazing shape. He asked me to look at his Facebook page, and his poses and his condition were unbelievable. And if anyone gets a chance to watch bits and pieces of the live stream, they were giving him nothing but outrageous compliments on how great he looked. So kudos to Greg Rando as well.
A few of the folks who did the Masters Olympia, including Hide, were at the North Americans. So it was actually I got to meet Hide for the first time, which was really awesome.
Cool.
He called me a monster, so I took that as a compliment. He just called me a monster. But a number of them were talking about how cool Romania was. The country, and I guess the dollar goes a really long way there. They're just saying you can buy so much.
Yeah.
And Kamal too, man, that guy. So, he's basically 53. It looks freaking amazing. He won the 212 at he was 47, I think. That guy's so inspirational.
Yeah. Hey, we had I don't know if you know, but this was years ago. But Hidetada did come lift in the animal cage once.
Oh man!
So
Many
years ago, early on, we did a charity bench press event versus a couple of Gaspari athletes. We invited them to the cage. We set it up, and we had them do a bench press off against our guys, and we raised money for charity, and it was actually pretty cool. I think the Gaspari guys won, unfortunately. Hidetada went against Frank McGrath, I think.
He did. I remember.
And he beat him. Did he beat him?
That well.
Hidetada beat him? Yeah, rough.
Was that maybe 2011?
Fuck, my memory's not that great, but it could have been.
I think it may have been.
Okay.
2011 or
it was
a little bit earlier.
Around then was the first cage that I ever went into as a fan. So, and I know I did the bench press thing, and I just vaguely recall hearing something about Gaspari versus Animal, but so anyway.
Yeah, that was kind of fun that we set that up, and it was for a good cause, so it was cool.
Yeah.
One of the first industry collaborations. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Ahead of the time.
I heard a dog bark.
Yeah, you're gonna hear a lot of them. I have 4.
My dog upstairs is barking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anytime she sees something outside the window, she's a barker, so she barks.
Oh, okay.
Everybody.
She's doing her job, Jay.
She is.
She thinks she's doing her job.
She goes overboard.
Yeah, I have 4, so anyone is bound to bark at any time.
Yeah, I bet Aries is taking a nap though.
He is actually. It's funny. He's lazy. He's in the bed. The other 3 are running around.
Yeah,
it takes a lot of effort for him to get up.
Yeah, where's my burger? That's what he wants to know.
Got to take him for one. Real quick, I just want to plug. I'm doing an event. I'm going to host an event on October 14th at Skiba's Gym. Poor Power Nutrition and Skiba's. We're going to do deadlifts for dogs, and it's going to be a fundraising deadlift contest. it's going to be for fun. Come and hit some PRs and raise money for Jersey Pits Rescue. They're going to be on site too. We're going to have some vendors there and, give back to rescue dogs, which is part of our mission at Paw Power. But we want to make this like a fun event, maybe like an annual thing. We'll see how the first one goes. And but that's October 14th at Skeeter's Gym. If anybody wants to come, you can come that day and sign up. You don't have to, pre-sign up or anything. It's going to be fun. So Herbie, if you want to fly out, you can come out.
Oh, I wish. Yeah. Sounds fun.
Cool. I think that's it for current events. You guys got anything else? If not, we'll get into Grill and Herbie over here.
We'll find out next week who wins the Italy Pro.
Go ahead, Jay. What were you gonna say?
Let's say the last thing is there's three of us, Chris, Eric, and I, that joined the fantasy football league. So
we're gonna start talking smack already on that.
We'll give some weekly updates as that.
I already had a rough start, man.
The goal, we always joke, the goal every season is to finish above Eric. So even if we're down there, we just want to finish above Eric. That's the goal. So we'll give those weekly.
I don't know if you guys saw, but we do it on Yahoo, and Yahoo gives you a grade for your draft. They crushed me, man. They gave me an F. They abused my draft.
I didn't do much better because I didn't do much.
I thought I did good on the draft. We'll see.
But that'll be fun. We'll give those up.
Herbie, you play fantasy football?
No, I never have. I got friends and coworkers to do. I don't even really know how it works.
That's for
just beat Eric. That's the goal.
Oh, hey, with friends like these, huh?
So, all right, let's get into Grill and Herbie. So, real quick, I want to just start with kind of your background, like where you grew up. We know you're in Northern California. Is that where you're from originally? Did you grow up there and stuff?
Yeah, so I grew up in the city of San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, so which is, as I've come to learn, it's kind of rare, I guess. A lot of people say they're from San Francisco, but they're really from outside of it, a suburb or whatever. But I was right in the center of it, and so that's just where from birth till 18, and then I went away to college. My first 2 years in Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania at University, where I wrestled there. And that's really, wrestling's really the reason I left there. They cut the wrestling program. So, so I love that. They've gotten it back since then, enough alumni donations and whatnot. But at the time, and so that was real, I really liked that school. It was fun, had a lot of close friendships. Had to transfer out for wrestling and got into Duke, which was I was surprised to get in there, but I did. So I transferred down to Duke and wrestled, redshirted the year. So I ended up doing there 3 years, graduated, and then eventually made my way back to California. Was never that fond of San Francisco itself. Not a big city person. So I kind of moved down to where I've been, San Jose area. It's an hour south, just 2 counties down from San Francisco. It's close enough because the rest of my family all stayed up there. But and I've been down here really ever since. It's been 16 years or so.
So how did you get into lifting weights? Was that from wrestling, or how did you get into it?
Even before that, I mean, really, it's lifting weights is by far my longest lifelong kind of passion. It started, my age was single digits. I remember, 6, 7 years old in PE class. Mr. McDonald, one of the PE teachers, and he'd have us do push-ups, and I was into that, and he'd have me do push-ups as an example for the class of proper technique. And so I'd already was begging my dad for weights, and I was 8 years old when he got me a pair of dumbbells from Sears.
Holy, that's the youngest I've heard anybody starting
before in my life.
Yeah. It was just very, very early, very clear that I was just kind of obsessed with strength and and muscles and all that stuff. And so, he got me that, and then my dad had been an athlete growing up, and he kind of independently was at that time also looking to kind of get back into shape. And so a few years later, I was 11. He joined the YMCA gym and I was already playing basketball for the YMCA team, and then he started taking me into the gym, and like I was clearly like normally the gym, I think they said you had to be 14 or older to go there, but like he talked to some folks and they gave me like a tour, and I wasn't allowed to use certain things, but like other things like I couldn't use free weights, but I could use like the universal machine thing, and I just lifted there starting at age 11, and then eventually went to high school, and then started using the weight room there, and all the weight room at the YMCA. And so, because wrestling didn't become a big thing for me till high school. I wish I had gotten into it earlier, but San Francisco, as a lot of urban areas, it's not a big thing. Like they're more football, basketball, soccer, baseball, and so I kind of sought that on my own. Then really got hooked onto that, and then from there it was just it was all she wrote.
So being that you started so young, when you did start wrestling, were you already a lot more muscular and stronger than the other kids?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Like I think I've always been one of the bigger, stronger kids, say in my class, and whether like that made me get more into lifting weights. I mean, we tend to like gravitate towards what we're good at or have some talent for, versus me being into lifting weights is what developed it. Because I mean, prior to puberty, there's like not a lot of like really growing one can do. I mean, it's good to exercise, but you're not going to see a whole lot from it until you start hitting puberty. And that, but yeah, that ended up as I got into wrestling. Like strength was definitely on my side, my biggest asset. But wrestling's one of those sports, and one of the great things is like so many different physical capacities get tested in it, and like there's some guys get into it who are very fast, you know what I mean, and so others are incredibly flexible and mobile, others are just great technicians, and all different combinations therein, conditioning, whatnot. And so, but strength was definitely my asset that I used to kind of against, say, a faster opponent or more technical opponent and whatnot.
Were there certain lifts that like help with wrestling that you found?
So
or is it not so much?
Yeah, like I think, and I'm kind of a proponent of the weight room being a place to develop general strength, and then the playing field or the mat, in the case of wrestling, being the place to develop like the sport specific strength. So, because a lot of like wrestling moves, it's really hard. You can try to emulate them with weights and whatnot, but really it's just doing the move itself over and over and over is developing that aspect of strength in the weight room. And that's where I think squat, the big compound lift, squat, deadlift, row, pull up, dip. I'm not saying I did bench press a lot just because it's everyone bench presses, but like I remember when I got to Duke, the coach there said, "Don't bench press." And some wrestling coaches say that because the position to bench press means you're pinned. You know what I mean? You're laying on your back. So, and you got to kind of ingrain in yourself to never ever be on your back. At the same time, I see it more. Okay, it's a horizontal pressing movement. It develops your triceps, your anterior deltoids, your pectorals, which are useful in a variety of wrestling positions. So, I never stopped bench pressing. But yeah, I think those are the movements that just build overall body strength that can then translate into the specific strength of the sport.
What are some of your lifts, Andrew? I know I got 942 behind me here, which is insane on the squat. As far as benching and deadlift, what are your achievements as far as that goes?
So when I got into the sport, and this is you'll see this with wrestlers, like my back was my strongest point, and still even on the bodybuilding stage, my back is my best area. So deadlift was originally my best lift, also my favorite lift. Still is my favorite. I just think the deadlift is super cool. I mean, I'm not an anti-sumo, but the conventional deadlift is just such a raw freaking, display of power. So yeah, deadlift the most, like my very first meet in 2014, I deadlifted 635. And I had actually before that done 675 in the gym. That's for the most I've ever done in the gym was 865, and the meet I did 859, 860. So those are my deadlift numbers. And that's all been conventional. I've kind of toyed with sumo, but like conventional always felt more natural to me. Then bench press. Bench press is kind of a emotional roller coaster for me because it was one of the first lifts I ever did as a kid. And so I still remember around age 11 fixating on the concept of a 500-pound bench press. At the time, like Junior Seau, rest in peace, he was a linebacker. And I remember there was a commercial he was on that talked about Junior Seau can bench press 500 pounds. And I was a big Junior Seau fan. And that stuck with me, 500-pound bench press. And my first meet that I did, I benched like 363. And I over at the end of college, I'd gotten up to like a 400 bench press. I mean, not with a pause, I mean, kind of more sloppy, very low 400s. But then through powerlifting that first year, 2 years, I made a lot of progress on my bench and did end up getting that 500. Did 507 in the gym, 501 in competition at Boss of Bosses 2. But then I ended up completely tearing my tricep off the bone in 2017 at a meet. And and it was, as far as like ruptures go, it was a very bad one. There's ruptures can be pretty clean, where it's just a clean break, not a whole lot of collateral damage, and the surgeon can reattach, or it can be just shred everything in between. And that's kind of what mine was. And so I've never gotten back to a 500-pound bench since then. Done everything I can, every rehab protocol, PRP, everything, gotten it up to like 484, but which is close, and it's better than I think anyone was predicting it would get. I mean, there's a piece of my lower tricep that's just missing. That the doc had to take out because the bone. So there's the scar, and so the bone came off, and the tendon was already like frayed like a rope. So the tendon had fallen apart. The bone came off. It shot up and it tore up like all the muscle tissue. So it's pretty gnarly. As the surgeon who operated on me, and he's operated on me more than once. I guess when he cut my arm open, said like, "Whoa, that's crazy." So he actually, I don't know how the sanitation of this works, but he took a cell phone picture of it and sent it to me afterwards.
Wow.
Just to kind of like, which I have on my phone. I put it on my social media, just kind of show how gnarly the arm was. Like it basically just looked like a bomb went off in there.
Wow.
So, but yeah, so that's bench press for me. And then squat. And squat is the thing where originally out of the 3 power lifts was kind of like my weakest lift.
Wow. And that's what you're known for, really.
Yeah. So I attribute a lot of credit there to like Dan Green. And because I think out of the 3, they're all technical lifts, but I would say the squat has the most area for technical adaptations. I mean, so many things: foot position, hand position, bar position, how much posterior versus anterior tilt, just all kinds of stuff. And that's where through those technical adaptations and addressing weak points over the years, was able to really progress my squat more, whereas my deadlift was already pretty advanced. And, as I said, the bench press had its own factors there. So with the squat, the most in sleeves, which most of my competitions have been sleeves, not wraps. 810 is the most I did in competition. I did 865 in the gym. That's the last kind of major injury I had was doing 881 in the gym 2 weeks before I was supposed to compete, and then that's when my hip blew out. And then in wraps, 959 is the most I've done in the gym, and then there's that 942, and before that I had a 915 and a 10 in competition. Those were world records.
And what body weight was when you did like the 942? What weight class were you in?
So all those competitions, 242 or 110 kilos. My
Cool.
first year in the sport, I was at 220, so 100 kilos, and then I pretty quickly outgrew that weight class, and then just been 242 ever since.
Those are super impressive numbers.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
If anyone's watching this, and when you do watch it, whether you're picking up the animal cage videos or just searching for Andrew Herbert on YouTube, when you watch these lifts, it's just like, oh my God, you know, I don't even know how you have the guts to get under it, and then even watch you get under it, maybe not feel so good once you lifted it off, and then saying, nah, I still want to go for it. That to me is amazing. And of course, Eric and Jay are you know, much more, you know, into the powerlifting than I am. So I've really got like an outside admiration for anyone that's got the guts to try and lift it off the floor, put it on their back. It's
when you're doing like a big squat like that, it's a lot of it's mental, and you got to have a commitment, and you can't really have any doubt in your mind.
Yeah.
You got to go for it and just make a commitment to the depth and to squat it. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, but I know if I've ever had a lift where there's a slight little doubt, I usually have missed it. You got to be really confident.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Andrew for your lifts. Like, how's your mindset when you're going into the 942, for instance? Like, can you sort of like relive what was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah. You know, it's kind of a I don't know, eerie coincidence with like, so all three of the wrap squat world records I had, all three of them, I attempted that weight on the second, failed it, and then it was on the third. So, and that's where a lot of the mental gamesmanship, I guess, comes into play.
even more impressive that way.
Yeah, and like, it's, you know, it for all of them. Like, I'm one of the people that like I've never, like, you know, in the meet just super exceeded at what I've done in the gym. Like, I admire people who are able to do that. For me, though, it's kind of like you know, in the gym is where I build that confidence, that mental confidence where, okay, I've done this weight, or I've done very close to this weight, you know, this many times or whatever. That's big for me. And so that's part of it. And so, like, when I missed those second attempts, in my head, I'm knowing, okay, I have done this. I can do this. You know, I definitely get angry. I get angry that I missed it. I get angry that this means I'm not going to have the, you know, I always go into a meet kind of envisioning a first, second, third. And then, you know, this means, okay, well, I'm not going to get that third that I was envisioning. So I kind of trying to channel the negative emotions from that into just motivation, drive, whatever you want to call it, to hit the weight. But I will say, especially with the wrap squats, as opposed to really any of the other lifts, I temper kind of the like the rage aspect, because like with wraps, like, and that's also why I squat a lot slower in wraps. Like, the groove is so important, at least for me. Like, it's more important to be in the groove in proper position than to be like super, you know, aggressive. If that makes sense. Like with a deadlift would be the opposite, where I feel like I can just inhale the ammonia, get slapped in the face, just get really amped up, and still have decent technique and rip the bar. Whereas with the wrap squat, it's like, if I'm a millimeter off forward or back, side to side, with that much weight, because technically it's more weight than I can lift. I mean, like, the wraps are a mechanical advantage, helping me and everyone else to lift more than our raw bodies can lift. And so, like, any little misgroove and it's just, you're screwed. So I try and channel the emotion, but still keep it calm. Like in all those lifts, I never use any ammonia on the wrap squats. I'll never do any of the psych up stuff that I do on other lifts.
I agree. I found the same. Like, being too aggressive on the squat messes you up. And like you said, on the other lifts, I think you can kind of get away with it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to like
You got to be more disciplined, a little bit more controlled aggression, like on the squat.
100%. Yeah, controlled aggression is a great way to put it, and really focusing on the technical cues. Like hey, at North Americans, actually, I was just hanging out with Kevin Oak, like he's a buddy of mine,
Yeah.
and him and I have been kind of like, you know, squat buddies in the 242-pound weight class for years, and I give him a lot of credit for this. When I first set the world record in reps with 910 at the current open in 2018. And that's kind of my favorite squat. That's the squat I'm most proud of because that's when I was coming back from the major injury in 2017. It was my first meet back. And it was at the same competition where that happened.
Wow.
And it was my first like single lift world record. And like I said, I missed it on the second. And it was kind of my walkout was kind of jittery. It just wasn't stable with the bar. And Kevin and I were competing against each other, but I guess he had bombed out of squats, unfortunately. But he stuck around, and he remember he told me, he's like, slow down that walkout, go real slow, real methodical in the walkout. And I did. And I think that made, I don't know if it made the difference, but it definitely made part of the difference in me being able to get the lift. And it's a slowing, it's easy to get in that amped up mindset and just really unrack the bar and walk. But with that much weight, the wobbliness it's bad. So just slowing down is I found important in that particular lift.
That's definitely a good cue or a good tip for sure.
It's
Interesting.
a little bit different than me not liking to do bench press and saying, you know what, it's not feeling good today, I'll go over and do dips.
Not the
Once
same.
you're under the bar, right? Once you're under the bar and you're at an event or you have the bar under you, I mean, it's like you committed to it. You're like, holy shit! Like this,
You have to commit.
right?
You got to commit.
Yeah.
The one cool thing, like I always found, at least at a meet, if especially the good meets, you get capable spotters and you feel safe. Like you can go for it and feel like you're not going to get hurt.
That's a huge part. I mean, it's whether it's in the cage, because it's been that way at the cage, at meets or in the gym, like at Boss, is it's an individual sport, but it really takes a team. And those spotters, especially at meets. I mean, I every meet I make a point to thank the spotters and loaders, because those are the unsung heroes. I mean, I guarantee if you quantified the amount of work put in, like physical work, those folks work more than any of the lifters, anyone else. Like just and they've saved my butt plenty of times on missed lifts, and so that knowing they're there gives you that confidence too to just like go for it.
Right. So speaking of the cage, let me ask you, you've lifted in there a few times, you've been in the cage a bunch of times. What was your personal favorite lift that you did? And then I have a follow-up question.
Man, I'd say it's definitely the I guess it'd be the 2018 cage. That's where it was my first time as an official animal athlete in the cage, so that kind of had a special thing to it. And it was a 700-pound wrap squat for as many reps as I could do. And
I remember that. Yeah.
And so I think it just
I don't remember how many you got, but it was a lot. What'd you get? Do you remember?
I think 12. I think I failed on the 13th or something like that.
Crazy, bro.
Wow.
And
So you had to wipe your nose with
12.
blood.
Yes, you were bleeding.
Yeah, that's why my nose started bleeding, and just I mean, that definitely was not planned. It's just, I mean, the nose bleeding thing, a lot of people don't understand it. I mean, it's just when you're squatting super heavy weight, there's a lot of what's called intracranial pressure. Like you feel like your head's going to pop off, and that's why your face turns bright red and all that stuff. And so it's a very transient increase in your blood pressure, and the blood is going to find the path of least resistance. And if I don't know if the air is dry or whatever, I mean, as everyone knows, I mean, the reason nosebleeds happen, a lot of those little capillaries and whatnot in the nose are can be pretty flimsy, and then the second one goes under all that strain, then the blood comes out. The second most common thing would be in the eyes, bursting capillaries in the eyes. That's what you see sometimes, red eyes after you lift. So that was my favorite. I mean, that was just, it was my first time as an animal athlete in the cage. I think the crowd really liked it. It was just a really good time.
And it's fun, right? Because you don't have the pressure of a competition, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of just let loose and try something for fun, right?
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, that's why, like in 2020, when I was ready. The plan was to do the a 3 lift kind of in under a minute thing. And, I was so psyched for that, and then I remember everything got canceled because of the COVID stuff.
A couple of days before it was happening.
Yeah, and for me, like literally, it was hours before I was going to head to the airport. And I got the text, hey, don't come to the airport. And because I tell people, like, the Arnold, it's one of the and things like that, but the Arnold's kind of the biggest show where I feel it's like the only place where I feel normal, if that makes sense, like especially in the cage, with all the other, for lack of a better word, freaks, I don't mean that in the negative.
Yeah, no, that's a compliment in our world.
It's just for freaks, man, and like, it's just so cool to be with all those folks, with similar mindset, similar passions, just getting after it and lifting and supporting each other. It's just a very rare thing, but I treasure it,
So what was your favorite lift to watch at the cage?
Ooh, that's tough. Okay, well, I think number one, and I didn't watch a ton of it because it was actually, I was warming up for mine. But it was the Steve Johnson, Rob Hall,
Yeah.
600-pound deadlift marathon.
Crazy.
That's number one by a long shot.
And that one, so we make a plan for the cage, we make a schedule, we tell you guys, when you're gonna lift, but that one happened to go past its time limit, right? And you almost never know. And you as a lifter, you're getting ready, so that was like unplanned and
yeah. No, yeah,
I
was getting ready for my thing, and I keep looking over, like, like, so I'm trying to plan out my warm ups, to be warm enough, to do the lift, but not like too warm, And they kept going, and I don't think anyone would have predicted with a 600-pound deadlift back and forth.
No.
They did into the 60s.
No, so
Eric, what did you
predict? I emceed that event, and I think I said early on, I said, this probably won't go that long, or they're not going to get that many reps, and whatever. They just kept going.
I think you said like 20, maybe 25 reps at the most.
Right.
They'll get.
Yeah, which I'd say is a reasonable estimate, but and those guys bought it, and it was awesome. I would give honorable mention after that, to obviously Dan Green's a really good friend of mine, and when he did a 900-pound deadlift,
yes, that was awesome.
I'd seen him training for that. I knew all the preparation going into it, so it was really awesome to see that. And then another one was Andre Milanichev, when he squatted 900 for 5. And I was one of his spotters on that. And I still tell people, it's like, yeah, my lift was cool, but I got the spot for Milanichev. And that's like, that's, arguably cooler because, I mean, he's just such a icon in the sport and someone I've looked up to so much.
Yeah, what a nice guy. So at one time, you and Dan were training partners. Do you guys still train together or?
Yeah, I mean, so so he, him and Sparkle, they run Boss Barbell Club, and I've been a member there since 2014, really since I got into powerlifting. I'm still a member there, but really as I've focused on bodybuilding, I go to a called American Barbell Club. Used to be a Gold's, but they changed the name out here in these locations. A lot of my training is really more machine based and stuff like that, which so it just suits the bodybuilding training more to go there. But still a member at Boss, still Christy Hawkins, she's getting ready for the American Pro at the end of October, and so I'm gonna get in there to help her for that.
She's amazing.
Yeah, and so Dan, so I haven't trained with Dan in a long time, but like, I mean, he knows, like, if he needs me, I'll be there. And he's done so much for me over the years that I'll always support that guy.
So the natural transition question there is, why bodybuilding, and what made you decide to go to that sport?
So one big thing to say is that it's always been something that I've kind of had on my mind, at least in the last 10 years. I think some people, when I first got into powerlifting, it's not something I expected to take off like it did. Really the first meet I did was just an experiment that a couple friends kind of convinced me, hey, let's do this meet. And I was like, all right, I'll try it. And And so at the time, like I just love lifting weights and I love competing. So, you know, I've done three strongman competitions too. You know,
That's right.
I just,
Right.
you know, so I don't really pigeonhole myself as a power lifter or a bodybuilder or a strongman. I guess strength athlete. And so I think I would have tried bodybuilding earlier if powerlifting hadn't, you know, gone as well as it did. And so I kind of rode that wave, and I love powerlifting. That being said, I wish I had tried bodybuilding gotten into it much sooner. You know, and I wish I'd gotten into powerlifting much sooner. You know, I was I think maybe 30, 31 when I first did it. And, you know, I get it. I was wrestling up through kind of age 24, 25. So, but then there's those like years in between, and hindsight is 2020, of course. In those years, that's when I was getting into my current profession. And, you know, when you're in the academy, I mean, you really can't do much else. And when you're on your probationary year, you got to be really careful. So, and, you know, I worked a lot of overtime, like a lot of people do when they first get into it, just to, you know, build up a financial, you know, build up their finances and whatnot. So I understand why I didn't, but I still, if I could go back, I would have started competing earlier. So bodybuilding is, you know, better late than never. And it was as the powerlifting injuries started really accumulating is when I started to look more towards the bodybuilding, and I realized I wasn't getting any younger. So I kind of thought, well, like I'm not done with powerlifting at all, but
Cool.
you know, I was like, I need to at least get on stage. I did it. You know, the first show was just to see, oh, can I do this? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's a big valuable thing too, because it's doing a bodybuilding show is unlike anything else. I mean, it becomes a 24/7 lifestyle, and you know, some people aren't cut out for it. It's a big challenge, and so proving to myself that I could do it was big, and then actually that I enjoyed doing it is what got me to keep going on with it. So
Between the two, bodybuilding versus powerlifting, which one do you find more challenging or harder?
ah, um, good question, and something I think about a lot. I would say the short answer is I would say bodybuilding is harder, more challenging. A big part of it is, you know, I'd use the analogy of a marathon versus a sprint. You know, the bodybuilding, it is 24/7. You know, it's all the meals, it's all the, you know, the training is a big part of it, but it's just, you know, everything you do. And then there's even the logistical thing. I mean, the shaving, the tanning, you know, there's so much to it that it's really a drawn out marathon.
Yeah.
Powerlifting is a sprint. You know, it's you know, the training, you know, short bursts of strength, heavy lifts. You know, yeah, you need your nutrition to be on point, but it's not nearly as meticulous as bodybuilding.
Sure.
The cardio isn't there, all that stuff. So I think it's just the complexity and the amount of stuff, the lifestyle aspect is what tips kind of bodybuilding over the top, being a little just more difficult.
Is there one that you find like more satisfying, or one that you like better?
You know, oh man, I really enjoy bodybuilding. It For one thing, I like the training a little more. I mean, I love lifting heavy weight, and I still will go heavy, but it's more like, okay, a heavy set of 6 to 8 reps as opposed to, you know, a single, double, or triple.
Right.
And so I still get the satisfaction of lifting heavy and straining and grinding and all that stuff that I love. But the workouts like feel much more efficient, you know, shorter rest periods, you know, more reps per set, you know, just getting more done, you know, in an hour and a half, 2 hours, I can get a really complete full bodybuilding workout. Whereas something in powerlifting, I was in the gym for 4 hours. You know what I mean? You know,
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
and I think sometimes I went overboard, but still when I'm trying to, you know, rest a lot between maximal sets and then get to accessories and this, that, and the other, like, you know, the time can really go on. And so, you know, that's where I like the bodybuilding training more. It feels a little bit healthier where I'm, you know, incorporating all the cardio, the cleaner eating, stuff like that. Just kind of feels more like a kind of, for lack of a better word, holistic fitness approach, as opposed to really just trying to be as strong as possible.
Yeah.
And bodybuilding, I mean, I'm not going to say what Arnold said, but the pump, is and like, you really, chasing that pump is kind of has its own
It's fun.
satisfying aspect to it. You don't get as much of in the powerlifting training.
Right.
So, but it's close, man. I mean, hitting a
Mhm.
PR on a Mac, I mean, there's just something objectively rewarding about that part of powerlifting too. So it's not definitely not clear cut one way or the other, but if I had to choose one, I'd say bodybuilding.
Sure. Did you use a coach for like nutrition and diet and stuff? Did you work with Christy? Did you work with somebody?
So my out of the 4 shows I did, the last 2, so this North Americans, and then that was a long prep into that, and then the show before that, which was like a year ago, where I won the overall. That the final, I guess, 9 weeks or so of prep. I had a guy coach the guy who is coaching me. His name is Sasha Emerick,
Okay.
and he's a local guy in the Bay Area, and he's great. I mean, and that's the first 2 shows. I kind of Stan Efferding was giving me some guidance.
That's a pretty good coach right there.
Oh yeah, with Stan, and throughout the whole thing, I want to emphasize, Christy is kind of like the Rock, like or my Rock, where
Yeah.
like she's all, she. A lot of people don't know this. I mean, she is a pro bodybuilder. She
Yeah,
competed.
and a great one. She was a very
Yeah,
good pro
she was
bodybuilder.
in the Miss Olympia.
Mhm.
Won high level shows. All that stuff. So, I mean, she's been there, done that. So she's always been helping me, posing, training, all that stuff. With Stan, and Stan's like one of my big like mentors in all things fitness. I look up to that guy tremendously. So he gave me a lot of guidance. But with Sasha, having someone in person, that's like, especially where I'm still pretty new, like, he's looking at me posing, giving me little details to change this and change that.
Mhm.
He's very knowledgeable on nutrition, so he, having that hands-on coaching, I find to be really valuable. So he's been a great asset for me. I look forward to keep working with him.
It's awesome. Yeah, I could tell you certainly from what I've seen you between the powerlifting and then the bodybuilding, it's like you took to bodybuilding extremely, you know, transitioned wonderfully just as far as like how you hitting poses, going into that show, owning the stage, mandatories. And it's not often someone from powerlifting can pull that off, with hypertrophy and shape and curves. Um, really hand it to you, like how you've transitioned to it. And like you look like you've always been bodybuilding, even though you've got the foundation for powerlifting.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've really gone into it kind of full on, and tried to just be a real student of the game. Every powerlifting meet I did, people would come up to me and ask me, "Are you a bodybuilder?" And you say no. I say, "Oh, you should get
That's
into
a
it." So
compliment, man.
that, oh, huge, yeah, and I've always appreciated that. But that's another thing that kind of pushed me each time, thinking, "Oh, I really do need to pursue that." And so, yeah, but also just going into it with a open mind. I mean, like the posing, that's again just a ton of respect for that aspect of the game. I think people don't realize how complex that is until they're actually doing it. And so just having that, I guess they call it, white belt mentality, where okay, I'm a white belt in this. I gotta just learn, practice, and go from there.
So what's next as far as competition? You just came off North American, so what's the plan?
So yeah, North Americans was motivating. I mean,
That's a big show. I mean, that's a pro
big
qualifier. That's a
show,
big show.
first national show. I mean, I have high standards for myself, high expectations, and a goal was to win a pro card there. That did not happen. And I think for a lot of the competitors, we didn't anticipate how stacked the field was going to be. Like I've shared the story with a few people when we were lined up backstage. So I competed at super heavyweight. So my stage weight was 256. And
Wow.
there's a group of us, and there was like, I think over a dozen in my division 40 plus, and probably like 16 in the open, maybe even more. And
Oh.
the guy who ran the tanning vendor for the show, who's kind of like overseeing things, came up to a group of us, and he's like, he's like, I work the show every year, and I've never seen anywhere close to this number of like legit super heavyweights. And so that was a big compliment. But at the same, yeah, it was very competitive. And I think every show, you don't know who's going to be there. You know what I mean? Some shows, end up being much easier than others. Some people get pro cards, much easier than others. You know what I mean? So it's just, you just got to bring your best. And that's where it motivated me, where I feel like I brought my best, feel very good about that. And I feel like I've got it in me to bring better. And so, the specific show next, I mean, there's a few I have my eye on, a ways out, but for now I'm riding the rebound. I've filled back out a little faster than I thought I would. And yeah, just address the weak points, go from there. And so it wouldn't be until mid 2024 when I get back on stage as I see it. But definitely taking it another shot, or as many shots as it takes to get this done.
I remember Ronnie getting asked this question, and obviously we hold you in high regard. How do you feel like all this powerlifting and bodybuilding, has it helped you on the job? I mean, here you are saving lives, EMT, firemen, enforcing the law, protecting us. And I remember Ronnie saying one time, yeah, people just kind of like look at me and they just, they won't do anything bad. They'll just behave themselves. You feel that when you're out there and, getting that extra respect, or,
Yeah, there's kind of two aspects for me. There's the size and strength part, but also just my wrestling background too. Like, so especially now that MMA is more of a thing, I find people are seeing like my ear and that with the neck, and then they're really, you have a background.
Cauliflower ear.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So it's it's been interesting. I mean, ever since I first got into the profession, like say on the police side of things, I've had people like training officers say, the bad guys, they're going to try and take you on because they're going to try and take on, the biggest, strongest dude out there. Other people say, no one's going to try and take you on because this, that, and the other. And it's kind of in the middle. You can't go through years and years on the job without, having coming across some, confrontations and stuff like that. But I do think my, I guess, size, I think I get less of it than many other people. But also like demeanor and composure is part of it too. Like I don't get emotionally wrapped up in things. I really try and treat everyone I come across with respect. Do the best I can really to not have things go south. But it's an asset. I mean, it gives me confidence in a lot of situations. And on the medical and fire side, same thing there, where it's not a matter of people challenging you, but it's it's lifting patients off the floor, getting them onto a gurney. The firefighting is very physical. I mean, once water's charged through hose lines, those things are very difficult to maneuver. Putting ladders up against a building, forcing entry, things like that just require force, and just the size and strength aspect gives me confidence in those areas. It can be a detriment in other areas where, like, fitting into confined spaces, like not going to happen. Or even on the police side too, it's a more grim thing. But I remember even in the academy, you practice it's called room entries, and that's basically how you address doorways, hallways, things like that. And one of my training officers saying, like, hey, he pounds me on the chest, says, you got a lot of mass, that's a big target, so you got to be extra aware. Like, say when you're peeking around a doorway or around a hallway, like your shoulder is going to present way before your face, as opposed to a much smaller, slenderer person.
Interesting.
Actually, and I remember at my first department, responding to an officer getting shot, and he was a smaller guy. The suspect came out of the car, shot in the windshield, and just the fact that he was much smaller, he was able to really avoid, and there were holes in the car seat. His being smaller actually kind of saved him. So, so those are, there's good and bad to everything, advantages and disadvantages. And so, but I definitely am glad to have the background that I do.
So you really got to explain how this works, because I've never heard any place where you can be a firefighter, EMT, and policeman at the same time. It's certainly, I don't think you're even allowed to do that in New York or New Jersey. But so explain how that works, and is it like a different shift? Like one day you're a cop, one day you're fire, one day you're, how's it work?
So, and it's one of those things where where I work, I didn't even know, like I said, I grew up in San Francisco, and graduated from college. I came back home, wasn't sure really what to do with myself. And originally, actually, my mom, I was living with my mom at the time, and she said, "Hey, do you ever think about being a firefighter?" So that was like the kind of the planted seed that grew. And so I first became an EMT in San Francisco. I worked on an ambulance, just doing purely medical stuff. And but then I through actually Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where I was grappling, there was a couple SFPD guys who kind of encouraged me along that route. And so if I had known there was this city that does both, I would have applied, but I didn't even know. I didn't know much about the South Bay. I just knew San Jose was the big city. So actually I really just only applied to San Jose, thinking, I want to work in the big city, big department. And so but then when I came to San Jose, and I started in the same county as Sunnyvale, I started learning, there is this one department that does all of the different emergency services combined. And what I've learned is that, I guess back in the day, and so they say around here, it all used, before it became such a tech hub, it was like orchards and farmlands and stuff like that. It was a lot more rural. And so we're talking about like 40s, 50s and stuff. At that time, in those kinds of areas, it was more common where emergency services was a combined effort, just because there wasn't enough people to merit, having a separate police department, a separate fire department, and all that. Sunnyvale happened to be the one town that decided, hey, we're going to keep doing that. All the other ones said, well, we're growing, population's bigger, a lot more business and commerce. We need to specialize. And what keeps it going is, as what keeps a lot of things going, money. It saves the money because we have one chief instead of two chiefs, one administration instead of two. And so this is where the rubber hits the road. Every patrol officer has their fire gear in the trunk of their patrol car. And so any city, I don't care whether it's New York, LA, Chicago, the budget, they pay for firefighters a lot of times to be doing nothing, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way.
Oh, but you're paid to be ready for when something happens.
Right. It's called operational readiness. Because you have to, in a moment's notice, be able to get on that engine or that truck, go to a scene. And so where I work, the fire side is intentionally understaffed. In other words, those overhead costs are lessened because when a fire comes out, they'll send 6 patrol officers. GPS will show who's closer. They show up, and literally you get out of your patrol car, take off all your police stuff, put on all your fire stuff, and by that time, at least one fire engine has showed up.
You're pulling a Superman in your car, basically.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then there's really no room for vanity because, like, I've done this. It's broad daylight. All the neighbors are coming out. You're stripping off your underwear, on your fire stuff, and then so that's where. And also on patrol, the patrol officers also have a medical bag. And so if a medical call meets a certain requirement, like chest pain, difficulty breathing, things like that, they'll respond to that, and they can initiate CPR, among other things. So it saves money. Like, that's the big benefit. On the front end, there's a lot of training, as well as a lot of ongoing training required. And that's what makes it difficult. But but yeah, it's I'm grateful for it, just because and to address how it works. Even so, every year you're assigned one division or the other, fire division or patrol division, or special operations. Like I spent 5 years as a detective, and that's special operations. But for the most part, as a line level person, you're either patrol or fire, and you put in a request, and mostly based on seniority, the administration sends you where you want to go. And so the last couple of years I've been on the fire side, and it's nice just to do that. Having spent more of the earlier time on the police side,
Mhm.
The police side can wear on you a lot. There's a saying, when you work fire, people wave at you with 5 fingers. When you work police, they wave at you with 1 finger.
Yeah, it's a shame.
And so it's literally you be the same person,
Right.
and overtime is very available. We're understaffed, so you could work fire one day, police the next day, or vice versa, fill overtime spots. And I think there's some added stresses on the police side that aren't there on the fire side. The kids love to see you. They love the red engine. So
yeah,
there's some benefits there. But I like.
How many years have you been on the job?
So in emergency services, it's been, I think, so I became an EMT in 2017. Was sworn in as a police officer. 2007. Sorry. Sworn in as a officer in 2008. So 16 plus years as a first responder.
And to retire there, do you have to do 20 or 25 years?
It's super complicated. So we're in with the CalPERS, which is like the largest retirement system, I guess, in the country or something like that. And I'm so far from that I don't look too closely into it. Like I'm vested in the pension system, but you can't collect anything until you're 50. And there's been a lot of restructuring because of budget issues in the state. And I'm in a group where it's really 55 where I could start fully collecting, based on years of service.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the magic number people talk about is 30 years of service, really, where that's the full pension.
Gotcha.
But a lot of people don't make it to 30. You kind of start doing the math, at 20 and see, okay, what are my savings?
Right.
Yeah. How do I want to?
So you're doing 3 jobs, but you're only getting 1 pension, right?
Yeah. Sometimes people on the street, they hear that and they say, "Oh, you're a cop and a firefighter. They should pay double." Of course, we're like, "Yeah, that'd be great," but no.
I knew they wouldn't let you double dip on that one.
No way. That's all right. We're doing all right.
That's awesome, man. You're doing a great service for your community, and much respect for what you do.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's and I'm fortunate to have that job. Glad I got into it. It was really by chance. Like I said, my mom years ago said, "Hey, do you ever think about being a firefighter?" And at a time when, I had a good college degree, but I didn't want to be stuck behind a desk necessarily, and I wasn't really sure what I was, passionate. I know I was passionate about lifting weights, but
right. But you got to pay the bills. And lifting weights don't really pay the bills,
especially in the Bay Area, California, where everything is so freaking expensive.
Yeah, crazy. We got about 5-10 minutes left, fellas, just to let you know on the clock.
All right. Awesome. What else you want to talk about? You talked about powerlifting achievements, talked about the bodybuilding shows, obviously your career. What's new on the horizon? What's your next plans as far as, I know you talked about a show in mid 2024 that you're going to be, considering. What's the second half of this year look like for you? Is it just training, joining a different gym, affiliating yourself with a different training partner?
So it's nice to have the North Americans, done, because I kind of really put my all into that prep. And so it's been a week now, or 8 days. So I've just been, eating things that I haven't.
Good for you.
able to eat for a while, and was still training. I mean, literally the day after the show, I was in the gym, and so I'm just training, eating, and that's really the plan. Just trying to put good size on, especially in the places where I need it most. Over really the next few months, there's not a whole lot planned beyond that. Then obviously, work. Like I took some time off work for North Americans, and so that was nice. But I'm kind of back to reality now, and like I said, we're understaffed in the department, so there's always, anytime I'm at work, there's the prospect of being ordered to stay once you're there, and that, since took the last few weeks off, I'm probably at the top of the list for basically getting ordered.
So you got a plan for that, right? As a bodybuilder or whatever, like with your meals and stuff, right? You got to be ready for that.
Yeah. So like I always I got this big old cooler that I kind of pack with as much stuff as I can. Now that the show's over, it's a little bit easier. I mean, we can, you can drive the engine to the supermarket and grab a few things, because you're living at the firehouse. So there's
right. If I know one, I have a lot of friends that are FDNY. You guys eat pretty good.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, that's a big reason why I took a few weeks off at the very end, because it's like in the firehouse, where everyone else is kind of eating,
exposed to those foods.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, it's hard. One of my last shifts, like we helped some people out, and they were kind enough. They brought a pie to the station.
Smell it from like a mile away.
A pizza pie, or we're talking a dessert pie here?
Oh, sorry. I know, like it was I think it's a chocolate. So it was something from Marie Callender's. I don't know if they have those out there, but it's like this cakes and pies that are just amazing. And it was sitting right there on the table, and I feel good that I didn't touch it, but everyone else, it was very tempting. And so
just chew it and spit it out like LeBron did.
Oh, I feel like that would be even harder.
That sounds like more torture.
Yeah, that's torture.
Yeah, I mean, like towards the end of prep, when I was like especially depleted, like every meal I would be looking forward to the next meal, but I knew that each meal also was kind of a tease. You know what I mean? Because like you eat just enough to kind of get the nutrients in, but your stomach's still, not even close to full. And so it's that's where the mind game comes in.
Takes a ton of discipline, a ton.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, the discipline is really where it's at. I kind of found that building momentum is huge, like where I didn't touch that pie that someone brought. That gives me kind of momentum. Whereas if I did cheat or splurge or whatever, then you kind of
set you back,
lose that momentum. You know what I mean? And so like, especially in the final weeks, knowing, I didn't miss cardio. I didn't cheat meals. I mean, each day I wake up, I got to keep going. And that kind of I found that to be a really helpful kind of push.
That's a good attitude, man. Good way to think about it.
I've been waiting for Jay to come out with Cuts gum. Keep me.
It's not a bad idea if you came out with a gum that's not a fat burner, but an appetite suppressant gum.
Exactly. Yeah, something to keep my mouth occupied. Well,
that's a cool idea, man.
Well, a few years ago, Mark Bell came out with I think he called it fasting gum.
Okay.
It's a gum that I forget what was in it. There may have been caffeine or something like that, but I think it was something to kind of keep appetite at bay when he's doing intermittent fast or whatever.
Smart.
So
that makes a lot of sense, man. Jay, get on that, bro.
I like gum. I generally chew gum when I'm training, and it's like I always say, if I'm chewing gum, I can't be eating, right? Like can't.
Mm-hmm.
You heard it here first, Herbie. I want royalties.
Jump on it, Chris. Jump on it, bro.
Chris is chewing gum.
Yeah. Always. I was like, what the heck could I eat right now that won't ruin my diet? When you get the urges, they're strong. That's awesome. What would you say right now, as we get to the, last couple of minutes, what do you like lifting in the gym now when you're bodybuilding? Like, what's your favorite movements? Obviously, we talked about your deadlift, loving that, and your squat and bench. What are you finding that you you enjoy the most, whether it's machine or what in regards to bodybuilding?
Well, as far as the day goes, like back day, I love training back. I mean, and part of that could be that back's my strongest part. Part of it, I think, is the back looks so cool. There's so many different like aspects to it. And it just feels really good getting a really good like pump in the back. So, and especially for that, there's a few different kind of horizontal row variations that I really like. I'm a huge fan of Dorian Yates, and there's a hammer strength machine that really emulates the Yates row, kind of an underhand, so supinated grip. It's at an angle, so it's a little more comfortable than a straight bar. And you pull back and plate loaded. I really like that machine for back. That's kind of probably my favorite back movement. And then legs, training legs. I like that. I mean, just because, I've got such a history with squatting and whatnot. And also it's an area I'm trying to really bring up in the mass department. Like I know my legs are, very strong. It's just a matter of bringing it out, especially specifics like the quad sweep and whatnot, building the lower hamstrings. So it hangs in the side chest position and whatnot. And so like for that, I mean, hack squats, I really like hack squats. It's nice to, after so many years of barbell squatting, it's nice to do something where I don't have to think about as much.
More stability, more stable.
Right. Where I can really just, my back's against the pads are my shoulders, and all I'm thinking about is activating my quads, hitting the bottom of the machine, coming back up. It's kind of the simplicity of that is nice. And then I'll throw another one in there, like for the hamstrings, coming from a background of all this heavy deadlifting, but to really develop my hamstrings, I found a lot of benefit in like dumbbell stiff leg deadlifts, and not even having to go that heavy. I don't think I've gone over I know this is sort of heavy, but the 120-pound dumbbells. When you think about it, that's still, that's a net total of 240 pounds. I mean, for any of us here, that's still a warm up on a deadlift, regular deadlift. But if I'm doing it, doing sets of 12, really slow controlled, stretching the hamstrings like that, I feel a great benefit from that. And that'd be a top, when I say 120s, I'm talking about a top set. Like I'd start with 50s or 60s, 70s or 80, work my way up. And each of those sets having a lot of benefit, really feeling the hamstring. So it's kind of nice doing these similar things to powerlifting, but also they're different enough that it's refreshing and addresses a different angle.
Awesome. Yeah, you got to love it. And especially if you get the stimulation out of it, then you love it even that much more. And you start development out of it, then you really get addicted to the movement.
Yeah, and that's in with that movement and the other ones I mentioned, like the mind muscle connection. That's just kind of a fun thing to really dig into. That I didn't explore as much powerlifting, where I'm really focusing on just moving the weight as efficiently as possible. Whereas now, even especially towards the end of prep, where I was very lean, very dry, and intentionally trying to do things to keep the weights lighter, because I'm very, at that time you're very prone to injury, you know what I mean? And so it's really, trying to go slow, controlled, feeling the contraction, feeling the relaxation, the stretch, all that stuff, which is really all in the mind. It's nice to take that, I guess, bird's eye view of the lift, as opposed to just the movement, which I was doing in powerlifting. They both have their benefits, and it's just nice exploring this side.
Awesome. What else? What did we cover? What do you want to announce, or what do you want to make sure how people can find more out about you and learn about you, like we have?
So for me, Instagram is really where I'm at, and so Herbie the Love Bug, it's all all one word, and the love is LUV, not LOVE, because that one was already taken.
Well, then you'd be,
by the original Herbie the Love Bug, the car.
Who did that? But and then on Instagram, I mean, social media is a mixed bag. There's definitely good and bad to it, but I think there's more good to it, which is why I'm on it. And a lot of positive comments, messages I've gotten, really feels good, pushes me, to keep going. This goes for years. When I got injuries, a lot of people, telling me to keep my head up and that. So I'm very grateful to all the folks out there that have reached out to me over the years and kind of pushed me to keep going. It's a pretty cool thing. So yeah, Instagram is kind of where I'm at, and I do my best to put out, informative content, as well as just, my training. Occasionally I'll try my attempts at humor.
He-Man the Pug.
And that too.
He-Man.
Yeah.
He-Man, that's
Yeah.
right.
Love
Yeah,
He-Man.
he's awesome.
I'm creating a He-Man montage in my highlights. So
I
I
love
encourage
it.
people to
He's
look
awesome.
at that too. He is the greatest. Yeah.
Yeah, he is cool.
Gotta love the doggos, man. They are life, no doubt about
And
it.
he misses you, Eric. He misses
Well,
hanging out.
Tell Sparkle to bring Boss of Bosses back. I'll come out there and with a paw power table and sponsor it.
Oh, that would be
That'd be
awesome.
amazing.
Awesome. Well, again, certainly on behalf of all of us, Andrew, Herbie, we loved having you on. I knew your story was going to be great. I know we only scratched the surface, but I'm telling anybody again that gets to view this on Gym Guys Podcast or Gym Guys Pod on Instagram, if you do anything out of all this, search for Andrew on YouTube. And whether it's old animal cage footage, which you're certainly going to see Eric and Jay in the background there as well, you will just absolutely be super impressed on the lifts and just the mannerisms and just I watched it talk so many times on Mark Bell's podcast. I mean, just great information, and you really get to find out the man behind all the strength and all the lifts. That's why we love doing these podcasts, because people just learn so much more about the athlete than what they see on the surface, and usually what's behind the surface is even more impressive. So again, we can't thank you enough for being on the 20th episode. Perfect timing to have you on, and certainly look forward to having you on again and talk about other shows that you're going to be on. And I don't know what's next. He's fireman, EMTs, police officer. I don't know. He's going to join the army. Something in the military next, Coast Guard. But if anyone could do it, it's you. So again, really appreciate you having you on the podcast. Jay or Eric, any other parting words for Herbie?
Very cool catching up with you again, my friend.
Yeah, it's great seeing you, Andrew. Just reliving some of the moments from the past is awesome.
Yeah, no,
and seeing where you're going.
Well, and thanks all three of you guys for having me on. I got fond memories of all three of you, and it's just great seeing you guys. And yeah, I'm grateful. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Andrew.
Pleasure.
Yeah,
Catch us on the next episode of Gym Guys Podcast. Make sure you check out Andrew Herbert, Herbie the Love Bug, LUV on Instagram. See you all again soon.